Hey, Ron Magill here with another edition of Zoofari. Today we're talking about conservation and technology in conservation. You know, people come to the zoo and they say, well, what are zoos really doing for conservation? The Arabian Oryx is a classic example of a huge conservation success story. In 1972, the Arabian Oryx became extinct in the wild. And it was the work of several zoos, primarily the Phoenix Zoo, the London Zoo, along with several different countries, Arabia, Kuwait, where they started a world herd with 9 animals that they were able to save out of the animals that existed in the wild before they became extinct. And they worked cooperatively to breed them, using all kinds of disciplines, using different types of breeding disciplines to make sure you had a good, healthy genetic background of the animals, tagging animals to track them. And from that breeding in captivity, breeding under human care, today there are over 1,000 Arabian Oryx back in the wild. This was called Operation Oryx, and it's one prime example of using technology to save a species. By studying these animals, by taking data, population data, destination data, the range, how much range they need, what they feed on. These are incredibly adaptive animals. They live in the desert, and you can tell they live in the desert by a couple of different things. First of all, that white coloration. That white coloration is to reflect heat. Also, they need very little water. As a matter of fact, they can go weeks without even drinking water. They get their water from their plants, which they mostly feed on at night when they're able to absorb that night moisture. They also learn to lick moisture from fog that occurs occasionally in the desert. So this is an incredibly adaptable animal. They've been killed over the years, not just for meat, but also for their horns. Believe it or not, people believe there's a mystical power in those horns. Now, the difference between antelope and deer is that antelope have horns. Horns may swirl around, go straight up, but they don't have any branches on them. And a horn is permanent. If a horn breaks off, it will never grow back. Deer have antlers. Antlers have branches on them, and they shed their antlers every year, and they grow new ones. So that's a big difference. So when you take a horn off of an antelope, like an Arabian Oryx, it's never going to grow back. So these animals were killed to the point they became extinct in the wild in 1972, but now today, there are more than 1,000 in the wild, thanks to cooperative work with zoos. These are things, for instance, the black-footed ferret, the California condor, the red wolf. These are all animals that became extinct in the wild, but thanks to research and technology working with these animals under human care in zoos, we've been able to reintroduce them back into the wild, and those wild populations now are all related to zoo animals. So when you go to a zoo and you look at an animal on an exhibit, understand it as an ambassador for those wild counterparts that we help save every day. We'll see you on the next edition of Zoofari.